Admiral Kethvar had seen the rise and fall of 17 civilizations across his 4-century lifespan. His metallic exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, each mark telling a story of victory against impossible odds. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered half the galaxy through superior technology and ruthless efficiency, yet today, as he stood on the bridge of his flagship watching the blue-green planet below, something felt different. Earth hung in space like a fragile marble, its swirling clouds hiding the species that had somehow managed to unite every major galactic power against the Zephyrian advance. The humans had done what no civilization had achieved in millennia. They had stopped the unstoppable war machine that was his empire. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission from the human fleet," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Vexna. Her forearms moved gracefully across the control panels, adjusting frequencies with practiced ease. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in annoyance. "How many times must I tell them? We do not negotiate with primitives. They've had barely 200 years of space travel. What could they possibly offer us?" The view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of Admiral Sarah Chen, commander of the United Earth Defense Force. Her brown eyes held a determination that reminded Kethvar uncomfortably of his own people's warriors. Behind her, he could see the organized chaos of a military command center, humans moving with surprising efficiency despite their obvious youth as a spacefaring species. "Admiral Kethvar," Chen began, her voice calm despite the massive fleet of Zephyrian warships surrounding her home planet. "We're prepared to discuss terms for your withdrawal from our system." Kethvar's laugh echoed through his bridge, a sound like grinding metal that made several of his officers flinch. "Terms? You have exactly 47 ships against my fleet of 3,000. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What terms could you possibly propose that wouldn't end with your complete surrender?" Chen's expression didn't change. "We're not offering surrender, Admiral. We're offering you a chance to leave before you discover why every other empire in this sector has decided to stand with humanity rather than against us." The Zephyrian Admiral studied the human's face through the screen. In his centuries of conquest, he had learned to read the subtle signs of fear, desperation, and bluff. Yet Chen showed none of these. If anything, she seemed almost patient, as if she was giving him time to reach a conclusion she had already arrived at. "You speak of other empires standing with you," Kethvar said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Yet I see only human ships before me. Where are these mighty allies?" "They're not here because they don't need to be," Chen replied. "Every empire that has fought humanity has learned the same lesson. We don't fight like anyone else in the galaxy. We don't think like anyone else. And we certainly don't lose like anyone else." Kethvar's tactical officer, Commander Drexel, stepped forward. His crystalline skin refracted the bridge lights as he spoke. "Sir, our intelligence reports indicate that humans have never actually lost a war. Every conflict has ended in either their victory or a strategic withdrawal by their opponents." "Impossible," Kethvar growled. "No species has a perfect military record. It defies all logic and probability." "Perhaps," Chen said, having overheard the exchange through the open channel. "But then again, logic and probability have never been humanity's strongest suits. We prefer improvisation and stubbornness." The Admiral turned his attention back to the screen. "You claim to have never lost a war, yet you've been a spacefaring species for barely 2 centuries. How many wars could you possibly have fought?" Chen's smile was small but somehow unsettling. "Admiral, humanity has been at war with itself for our entire recorded history. We fought over land, resources, ideology, religion, and sometimes just because we were bored. By the time we reached the stars, we had refined warfare into an art form that your species can't even comprehend." "Enlighten me," Kethvar said, genuinely curious despite himself. "Take your current strategy," Chen continued. "You've surrounded our planet with overwhelming force, expecting us to surrender or face complete annihilation. It's a sound tactical approach that has worked for you countless times before, but you're applying alien logic to a human problem." Kethvar's primary eyes narrowed. "And what is the human perspective?" "The human perspective is that being surrounded just means we can attack in any direction we choose. Being outnumbered means our enemy has more targets to worry about. And facing annihilation?" Chen shrugged. "That's just Tuesday for us." The communication channel crackled as Chen adjusted something off screen. "Admiral, I'm going to share something with you. Before humanity reached the stars, we fought a war on our own planet that lasted 6 years and involved most of our species. The technology we used could have destroyed our entire world several times over. We knew this going into the conflict. We fought anyway. Kethavar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. Any species capable of risking planetary annihilation for the sake of warfare was clearly not thinking rationally. Irrational enemies were the most dangerous kind. But the truly human aspect of that war, Chen continued, was how it ended, not with one side destroying the other, but with both sides deciding they had bigger things to worry about. You see, Admiral, humans don't just fight wars to win. We fight wars to learn, and once we've learned everything we can from fighting each other, we start looking for new teachers. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Kethavar realized that every officer under his command was listening intently to the human admiral's words. This was not how conquest typically proceeded. What exactly are you saying, Admiral Chen? I'm saying that your empire has just volunteered to be humanity's next instructor in the art of warfare. The question is whether you want to graduate our class in one piece or leave as a cautionary tale for the next species that decides to test us. Kethavar looked around his bridge at the faces of officers who had conquered worlds without hesitation. Now they seemed uncertain, perhaps even nervous. A human fleet of fewer than 50 ships was somehow making the most feared military force in the galaxy question itself. You have 1 hour to consider our offer of safe passage, Chen said. After that, you'll discover firsthand why the Zephyrian Empire is about to become the 18th civilization Admiral Kethavar has watched fall. The difference is, this time, you'll be watching from the inside. The transmission ended, leaving the Zephyrian flagship in an uncomfortable silence that seemed to stretch across the void of space itself. The hour had passed like a heartbeat. Admiral Kethavar stood rigid on his bridge, watching the human fleet maintain their position with infuriating calm. 47 ships against 3,000. The mathematical impossibility of their confidence gnawed at his tactical mind like acid. "Sir," whispered Commander Drexel, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy, "perhaps we should consider their offer. Our intelligence network has been analyzing human conflicts during the delay. The data is disturbing." Kethavar's mandibles clicked impatiently. "Elaborate." "Every species that has engaged humans in warfare has reported the same phenomena. Human tactics appear to evolve during combat at an unprecedented rate. They seem to learn from each exchange, adapting faster than our battle computers can calculate new strategies." "Impossible," Kethavar growled. "No organic mind can process tactical data faster than our quantum systems." "That's what the Krillians thought," Drexel replied quietly. "Their entire battle fleet was destroyed in a single engagement lasting 18 minutes. The humans used their own technology against them, somehow turning their adaptive shields into weapons." Before Kethavar could respond, his tactical display erupted in warning lights. The human ships weren't moving, but something was happening. Energy readings across the small fleet were climbing exponentially, yet their weapons remained powered down. "What are they doing?" he demanded. Lieutenant Vexna's forearms danced across her instruments. "Unknown, sir. The energy signatures don't match any known weapon systems. It's almost like they're charging some kind of massive communications array." Admiral Chen's voice cut through the bridge speakers without warning. "Admiral Kethavar, I hope you've used your time wisely. Since you've chosen to remain, let me show you something about human warfare that our previous opponents found educational." The main view screen shifted to display a tactical overview of human space. Kethavar's breath caught in his throat as hundreds of new contacts appeared on the display. Ships, thousands of them. But these weren't the primitive vessels he expected. "What you're seeing," Chen explained calmly, "is the human reserve fleet. Every ship you're looking at was built in the last 6 months using technology acquired from civilizations that thought they could conquer us. Zephyrian technology features prominently in our newest designs." Kethavar's mind reeled. "That's impossible. It takes years to reverse engineer alien technology, decades to mass produce it." "For most species, yes," Chen agreed. "But humans have a unique approach to technological acquisition. We call it aggressive learning. When someone shoots at us with advanced weapons, we don't just develop countermeasures. We develop improvements." The display zoomed in on one of the approaching fleets. Kethavar's secondary eyes widened in shock as he recognized hull configurations that were clearly Zephyrian in origin. but modified beyond recognition. Where his ships were built for overwhelming firepower and heavy armor, these human vessels seemed designed for something else entirely. "Those are our ship designs," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Were your ship designs?" Chen corrected. "We've made some modifications. Would you like a demonstration?" Before Kethavar could respond, one of the human ships in the nearby fleet simply vanished. His sensors registered the disappearance but couldn't explain it. No explosion, no energy discharge, nothing that would indicate destruction. The ship had simply ceased to exist. "Stealth technology," his science officer reported, her voice shaking. "But it's unlike anything in our databases. They're not just hiding from sensors, they're somehow removing themselves from space-time temporarily." Chen's voice continued, as calm as if she were discussing weather patterns. "We learned dimensional phasing from the Zarathi Empire last year. They thought it would give them an insurmountable advantage. They were right, just not in the way they expected." More ships began vanishing from sensors, reappearing in different locations around the Zephyrian fleet. Kethavar realized with growing horror that his supposedly superior force was being surrounded by vessels using his own technology against him. "This is what humans do, Admiral," Chen explained. "We don't just fight wars to win territory or resources. We fight to evolve. Every enemy teaches us something new, makes us stronger, forces us to become something greater than we were before." Kethavar's tactical display showed human ships materializing throughout his formation. They weren't attacking, simply taking positions that would allow them to devastating effect if hostilities began. His fleet of 3,000 was being maneuvered like pieces on a game board. The Vorthon hegemony had shields that could absorb any energy weapon. Chen continued conversationally. "So we learned to build weapons that didn't use energy. The Crystalline Collective had hulls that could regenerate from any physical damage. We developed viruses that could corrupt their living metal." With each example, more human ships appeared on sensors, each one demonstrating technology that Kethavar recognized as belonging to some of the galaxy's most feared military powers. The humans hadn't just defeated these civilizations, they had absorbed their knowledge and improved upon it. "The pattern you're seeing," Chen said, "is why every major empire in this sector eventually chooses to ally with humanity rather than fight us. Not because we're unbeatable, but because fighting us makes us stronger. Every engagement teaches us new ways to defend ourselves and new ways to defeat our enemies." Kethavar's communications officer looked up from her station, all four arms trembling. "Sir, we're receiving tactical data from across the galaxy. The humans are transmitting real-time updates from 17 different star systems. They're sharing everything they learn instantaneously across their entire civilization." The implications hit Kethavar like a plasma bolt to the chest. Humans didn't just learn from their own mistakes and victories. They learned from every human conflict happening anywhere in known space. Their entire species was essentially one massive military learning algorithm. "This is how we've never lost a war," Chen explained. "Not because we're perfect warriors, but because we're perfect students. Every battle teaches us something new, and we share that knowledge with every human fleet in existence. By the time any enemy figures out how to counter our tactics, we've already moved on to something else." The human ships began performing maneuvers that defied everything Kethavar understood about physics and space combat. They moved through dimensions, bent space around themselves, and used gravity as a weapon. Each impossible action was performed with the casual competence of a species that had been doing such things for generations rather than months. "Admiral," his science officer reported, her voice barely audible, "they're not just using our technology better than we do. They're using everyone's technology better than the original creators." Kethavar stared at the tactical display, showing his fleet completely outmaneuvered by a force that had appeared from nowhere in less than an hour. The humans had turned his overwhelming advantage into a demonstration of their own superiority without firing a single shot. "You wanted to know about human warfare, Admiral," Chen said. "The first lesson is this. We don't fight to destroy our enemies. We fight to become them and then become something better." Admiral Kethavar found himself in a position he had never experienced in 4 centuries of conquest, completely outmaneuvered without a shot being fired. The human fleet surrounding his forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of warfare he had spent his lifetime mastering. "Admiral Chen," he said, his voice carefully controlled despite the chaos of his thoughts, "I admit your display has been impressive, but Surely you don't expect me to believe that 47 ships can defeat 3,000 simply through technological superiority. Chen's laugh carried a warmth that somehow made it more unsettling than any threat. Admiral, you're still thinking like every other species we've encountered. You're focused on numbers, technology, and tactical advantage. Those things matter, but they're not what wins wars. Then what does? Kethavar demanded. Understanding, Chen replied. Let me ask you something. In all your centuries of conquest, how many times have you personally set foot on a world you were attacking? The question caught Kethavar off guard. I am a fleet commander. My place is on the bridge, directing operations from a strategic perspective. Exactly, Chen said. You conquered 17 civilizations from the safety of your command ship, studying them through tactical reports and sensor data. You learned their military capabilities, their technological weaknesses, their strategic resources. But did you ever learn who they were? Kethavar's mandibles clicked in confusion. I fail to see the relevance. The relevance, Chen explained, is that humans don't just fight our enemies. We understand them. We study their culture, their history, their motivations. We learn why they fight, not just how they fight. The main display shifted to show detailed files on dozens of alien species. Kethavar recognized many of them as civilizations the Zephyrian Empire had conquered or absorbed. But these files contained information far beyond military specifications. We know that Zephyrian warriors undergo a ritual scarring process at age 50 to mark their transition to full military status. Chen continued. We know that your empire's expansion is driven not by conquest for its own sake, but by a deep-seated cultural need to prove worthiness to your ancestors. We know that the reason you never land on the worlds you conquer is because Zephyrian mythology considers it spiritually contaminating to walk on soil that hasn't been earned through proper combat. Kethavar felt his exoskeleton grow cold. This level of cultural knowledge was impossible for outsiders to obtain. Much of what Chen had mentioned was restricted to the highest levels of Zephyrian society. How? He whispered. Because we do our homework, Chen replied. Every human ship carries cultural anthropologists, linguists, historians, and psychologists alongside our military personnel. We don't just study how to defeat our enemies. We study how to understand them. Commander Drexel stepped closer to Kethavar, his crystalline form refracting nervous light patterns. Sir, this explains the intelligence reports. Human diplomatic missions to neutral worlds always include scholars and researchers. We assumed they were gathering technological intelligence. They were, Chen confirmed, apparently monitoring their communications. But not the kind you think. We were learning how different species think, how they approach problems, how their cultures shape their military strategies. When the time came to fight, we already knew exactly how each enemy would respond to specific situations. The tactical display updated to show a three-dimensional map of every major engagement between humans and other species. Each battle was annotated with cultural notes explaining how human forces had exploited specific behavioral patterns and psychological tendencies of their opponents. The Krillians you mentioned earlier, Chen continued. Their culture values individual achievement above collective success, so we created situations where their commanders competed with each other instead of working together. Their entire fleet command structure collapsed in minutes. Kethavar studied the data with growing unease. The Sarathi Empire, obsessed with honor and formal protocols, we challenged them to single combat between champions, then used the delay to evacuate civilians and prepare defensive positions. By the time they realized we had no intention of honoring their traditional rules of warfare, it was too late. This is psychological warfare on a species-wide scale, Kethavar said, his voice filled with something approaching awe. It's comprehensive warfare, Chen corrected. Most species fight with their military. Humans fight with our entire civilization. Every human citizen is trained from childhood to observe, learn, and adapt. Our scientists, artists, teachers, and farmers all contribute to our military capabilities simply by being human. The communications officer, Lieutenant Vexna, looked up from her station with all four eyes wide. Sir, I'm detecting massive data flows from the human fleet. They're not just coordinating tactics. They're sharing cultural observations, psychological profiles, and behavioral analyses in real time. Every engagement teaches us something new about how Zephyrians think and fight, Chen explained. Right now, thousands of human analysts are studying your fleet's formations. your communication patterns, your decision-making processes. By the time this conversation ends, we'll know more about Zephyrian military psychology than most Zephyrian commanders. Kethavar realized that the human strategy was even more terrifying than he had initially understood. They weren't just learning how to fight Zephyrian technology. They were learning how to think like Zephyrians, predict Zephyrian behavior, and manipulate Zephyrian cultural responses. But understanding culture isn't enough to win wars, he protested. Superior technology and numbers still matter. Of course they do, Chen agreed. But humans have a saying, know your enemy and know yourself and you will never be defeated. We've spent 2 centuries knowing ourselves through constant warfare. Now we're spending our time knowing everyone else. The display shifted to show human military academies where alien instructors taught human cadets about different species' combat philosophies. Former enemies worked alongside human strategists, sharing knowledge and perspectives in an unprecedented exchange of military wisdom. This is what you're really fighting, Admiral, Chen said. Not just human technology or human numbers, but human adaptability. We turn every enemy into a teacher, every defeat into a lesson, every victory into a stepping stone toward something greater. Kethavar looked around his bridge at officers who had conquered worlds without question. Now they seemed overwhelmed by the complexity of what they faced. The humans had weaponized learning itself, turning warfare into an educational experience that made them stronger with every engagement. What do you want from us? He asked finally. What we want, Chen replied, is for you to make a choice. You can continue this engagement and become another case study in our military development programs, or you can become something much more valuable. Which is? Our next teachers, Chen said simply. The Zephyrian Empire has 4 centuries of military experience that human strategists would love to learn from. Your insights into large-scale fleet coordination, your innovations in siege warfare, your approaches to multi-species command structures, all invaluable knowledge that we could use to defend the galaxy against threats that neither of us has encountered yet. The offer hung in the space between them like a weapon that could destroy or create entire civilizations, depending on how it was wielded. The bridge of the Zephyrian flagship fell into absolute silence. Admiral Kethavar had expected many things from this encounter with humanity. Surrender, desperate last stands, even primitive attempts at bribery. He had not expected to be offered a teaching position in what appeared to be the galaxy's most comprehensive military university. You're asking me to join you, he said slowly, testing the concept like a weapon he wasn't sure how to hold. We're asking you to evolve, Chen replied. The same choice we've offered every species we've encountered. You can remain what you are and gradually become obsolete, or you can become part of something that's growing beyond what any single civilization can achieve alone. Commander Drexel moved closer to Kethavar, his crystalline body pulsing with nervous energy. Sir, I'm receiving reports from our outer patrol ships. They're detecting massive fleet movements throughout the sector. It appears that several of our former enemies are approaching in formation with human vessels. The main tactical display updated to show the approaching fleets. Kethavar's breath caught as he recognized ship designs from the Krillian collective. The Zerathi Empire, the Vorthan hegemony, and dozens of other civilizations that the Zephyrian Empire had catalogued as conquered or destroyed. Yet here they were, flying alongside human vessels in perfect coordination. Impossible, Kethavar whispered. We have intelligence reports confirming the destruction of most of these fleets. Your intelligence was correct, Chen said. Those civilizations were defeated. But defeat and destruction are very different things. We offered each of them the same choice we're offering you now. The display zoomed in on individual ships, revealing configurations that were clearly hybrid designs. Zephyrian weapon systems mounted on Krillian hulls, Zerathi shields protecting human vessels, technology from dozens of species integrated into seamless combinations that no single civilization could have imagined. This is what human warfare really looks like, Chen explained. We don't conquer our enemies. We recruit them. We don't destroy civilizations. We upgrade them. Lieutenant Vexna looked up from her communication station, all forearms trembling. Sir, we're receiving direct communications from Admiral Thekmoth of the Krillian Collective. He's requesting permission to speak with you. Kethavar had known Thekmoth for over a century. They had been allies in several campaigns before the Krillians had mysteriously vanished from the galactic stage 18 months ago. The idea that his old colleague was not only alive but apparently allied with humanity defied everything he understood about the situation. "Put him through," Kethavar ordered. The view screen split to show Admiral Chen on one side and the familiar insectoid features of Thekmoth on the other. The Krillian admiral looked different somehow, more alert, more confident than Kethavar remembered. "Kethavar," Thekmoth said, his mandibles clicking in the traditional Krillian greeting. "I hoped I would have the chance to speak with you before you made your decision." "Thekmoth," Kethavar replied, struggling to process what he was seeing. "Intelligence reports indicated your entire fleet was destroyed by human forces." Thekmoth's laugh was a sound like rustling leaves. "Our fleet was defeated, yes, utterly and completely, but the humans offered us something no conqueror had ever provided before, the chance to understand why we lost." "Explain." "Kethavar, in our entire history, whenever the Krillian Collective lost a battle, we studied our tactical errors and adjusted our strategies. We thought this was learning. But the humans showed us that we were only examining the surface of warfare." The Krillian admiral gestured to something off-screen. "They taught us to examine our cultural assumptions about combat, our psychological blind spots, our species-wide behavioral patterns that made us predictable to enemies who understood them. For the first time in our history, we learned why we thought the way we did, not just how to think better." Kethavar felt his worldview shifting in ways that made him uncomfortable. "And this knowledge, it made you stronger?" "It made us complete," Thekmoth replied. "Working alongside human strategists, Zerathi engineers, and Vorthon scientists, we've developed capabilities that none of our species could have achieved alone. We haven't lost our identity, we've expanded it." Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. "This is what humans call hybrid vigor. When different systems combine, they often become more capable than the sum of their parts. It's true in biology, technology, and apparently in civilization as well." The tactical display updated again, showing detailed specifications for the hybrid fleets approaching their position. Kethavar realized he was looking at military technology that surpassed anything his empire had developed, created through combinations of knowledge that no single species possessed. "The humans didn't just defeat us," Thekmoth continued. "They made us partners in our own evolution. Every species that joins this alliance brings unique perspectives and capabilities that benefit everyone involved." "But surely," Kethavar protested, "there must be some loss of independence, some surrender of sovereignty. Has the Zephyrian Empire ever conquered a world and then allowed that world to maintain its original government and culture?" Chen asked quietly. Kethavar's mandibles clicked in discomfort. "Conquered territories are integrated into the Empire for efficiency and unity." "Exactly," Chen said. "Traditional conquest requires the destruction or suppression of local cultures to maintain control. But what we're offering is synthesis rather than absorption. Each species maintains its identity while contributing to a larger whole." The communication system activated again, and additional windows opened on the screen. Kethavar found himself looking at commanders from a dozen different species, all apparently allied with humanity. Many were faces he recognized from intelligence briefings on eliminated threats. "Admiral Kethavar," said Commander Vextala of the Hegemony, her crystalline features reflecting rainbow patterns. "The Vorthon people thought our regenerative technology made us invincible. The humans taught us that invincibility is a weakness because it prevents learning. Now our ships can adapt not just to damage, but to entirely new forms of warfare. The Zerathi believed our honor code was our greatest strength," added General Morthak, his scaled features showing the ritual scars of his warrior caste. "The humans showed us how that same code could be turned against us by enemies who understood it better than we did. Now we maintain our honor while understanding how to protect it from exploitation." One by one, each commander shared their story of defeat, enlightenment, and transformation. The pattern was always the same: complete military defeat followed by an offer of understanding, education, and partnership that made them stronger than they had ever been alone. "This is what you're really facing, Kethavar," Thekmoth said. "Not just human military might, but human potential for transformation. They don't just win wars, they win civilizations." Admiral Chen's expression remained calm, but Kethavar detected something that might have been sympathy in her eyes. "The choice is yours, Admiral. You can fight us and eventually lose, as every other empire has. Or you can join us and help create something that none of our species could build alone. Kethvar looked around his bridge at officers who had followed him through 17 successful conquests. Now they seemed to be waiting for him to make a decision that would determine not just their fate, but the future of their entire civilization. Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of his bridge, surrounded by the weight of a decision that would reshape not just his own destiny, but the fate of the entire Zephyrian Empire. The hybrid fleets continued their approach, their very existence a testament to humanity's revolutionary approach to warfare and diplomacy. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of 4 centuries of military command, "if I were to consider your offer, what exactly would you require from the Zephyrian Empire?" Chen's response was immediate, as if she had been expecting this question. "Complete transparency about your military capabilities, full access to your strategic databases, and most importantly, a genuine commitment to learning rather than simply cooperating. Explain the difference." "Cooperation implies that 2 parties work together while maintaining their original perspectives," Chen said. "Learning means being willing to discover that some of your fundamental assumptions about warfare, strategy, and civilization itself might be wrong." Commander Drexel stepped forward, his crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. "Sir, with respect, the humans are asking us to potentially abandon military doctrines that have served our empire for millennia." "Not abandon," interrupted Admiral Thekmoth from his communication window. "Evolve. Kethvar, do you remember the siege of Corvash Prime? My fleet used traditional Krillian swarm tactics against Vorthon defensive positions. We won, but barely, and at tremendous cost." Kethvar nodded. "I remember. 40% casualties for what should have been a routine conquest. Last month, human strategists showed me 17 different ways that engagement could have been conducted with less than 5% casualties." Thekmoth continued. "They didn't criticize our tactics. They explained why our cultural preference for honor through individual combat made us predictable to an enemy that understood group psychology." The main display shifted to show a tactical simulation of the Battle of Corvash Prime. Kethvar watched in fascination, as human analysts demonstrated how Krillian behavioral patterns had been exploited by Vorthon defenders, and how simple modifications to those patterns could have changed the entire outcome of the engagement. "This is what we mean by learning," Chen explained. "Not just studying new technologies or tactics, but understanding the cultural and psychological foundations that drive your strategic thinking. Once you understand why you make certain decisions, you can choose whether to make them differently." Lieutenant Vexna looked up from her station, her forearms moving nervously across her controls. "Admiral, I'm detecting something unusual. The approaching fleets are sharing real-time tactical data with our sensors. They're teaching us how to read their formations." Kethvar's tactical display updated with detailed information about every ship in the approaching alliance. Weapon specifications, shield configurations, crew complements, even cultural backgrounds of the commanding officers. It was an unprecedented level of transparency that would normally be considered a massive security breach. "Why?" Kethvar demanded. "Why are you showing us this information?" "Because," Chen replied, "true strength comes from understanding, not from secrets. Every species in our alliance knows exactly what every other species is capable of. We have no hidden agendas because we have no need for them." General Morthak's window activated again, the scarred Zarathi warrior leaning forward. "Kethvar, I know what you're thinking. This level of openness feels like madness to a military mind. But consider this. When everyone knows everyone else's capabilities, competition becomes about innovation rather than deception. The result," added Commander Vextala, "is that our combined fleets are more capable than any traditional military force, because we're not wasting effort hiding our strengths from our allies or second-guessing their motivations." Kethvar studied the data flowing across his screens. The technological integration he was seeing represented advances that would have taken his empire decades to develop independently. More importantly, the strategic innovations arising from cross-species cooperation suggested approaches to warfare that no single civilization would have conceived. "Admiral Chen," he said slowly, "what happens if a species joins your alliance and then decides to leave?" "It's never happened," Chen replied. "But theoretically, they would leave with all the knowledge and capabilities they gained during their association with us. We don't believe in holding anyone prisoner, even intellectually. That seems risky. Only if you assume that people will choose to leave something that makes them stronger, more capable and more fulfilled than they were before, Chen said. Our experience suggests that once a civilization discovers what it can become through cooperative evolution, the idea of returning to isolation becomes unthinkable. The bridge speakers crackled as another voice joined the conversation. This time it was Admiral Zephyron of the Crystalline Collective, a species that Kethvar had personally defeated in battle 3 years earlier. Kethvar, Zephyron said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated through the ship's hull. I want you to understand something. When humans defeated our fleet, we lost everything we thought we were. Our entire identity was built around being the most advanced technological civilization in the galaxy. And now? Kethvar asked. Now we realize that advancement isn't about being better than everyone else. It's about helping everyone become better together. The technologies we've developed since joining the human alliance exceed anything we achieved in isolation. By orders of magnitude, the tactical display updated to show crystalline ships that were clearly far beyond anything Kethvar had encountered during his previous campaign against them. Their living metal hulls now incorporated design elements from dozens of different species, creating vessels that seemed to exist at the intersection of biology, technology, and art. But surely, Kethvar protested, this alliance has some central authority, some controlling power that makes final decisions. Chen shook her head. Decisions are made by consensus among species representatives, with humans having one vote among many. We facilitate the alliance because we started it, and because our cultural background makes us natural coordinators, but we don't control it. The humans, Thekamoth added, have a saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. They genuinely believe that making everyone around them stronger makes them stronger as well. It's a perspective that transforms competition from a zero-sum game into collaborative improvement. Kethvar felt his fundamental understanding of power and control shifting beneath him like unstable ground. Everything he had learned about leadership, conquest, and empire suggested that this level of voluntary cooperation was impossible. Yet the evidence before him suggested otherwise. There's something else you should understand, Chen said quietly. This alliance isn't just about military cooperation. We're facing threats that no single species could handle alone. The main display shifted to show sensor readings from the edge of known space. Kethvar's breath caught as he recognized the energy signatures of ships using technology, unlike anything in the galactic database. Unknown vessels have been probing our border systems for the past 6 months, Chen explained. Their capabilities suggest a technological level that exceeds anything we've encountered. When they arrive in force, we'll need every advantage we can muster. Admiral Zephyron's harmonics took on an urgent tone. These new entities don't appear interested in communication or negotiation. Every probe contact has resulted in the complete destruction of whatever forces they encounter. We're not just building an alliance for conquest or defense. We're building it for survival. Kethvar stared at the alien energy signatures, his military mind automatically calculating the implications. If these readings were accurate, the unknown forces possessed capabilities that would make them a threat to every known civilization, regardless of their current political alignments. The choice before him was no longer just about the Zephyrian Empire's future. It was about whether that future would exist at all. The silence on the bridge stretched for what felt like an eternity. Admiral Kethvar stared at the unknown energy signatures on his display, his mind processing implications that went far beyond the immediate tactical situation. In 4 centuries of conquest, he had never encountered anything that made his entire fleet seem inadequate. How long? He asked quietly. Before these unknown forces arrive in significant numbers, Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Our best estimates suggest 6 months to 2 years, depending on their rate of expansion and whether they're conducting reconnaissance or preparing for full-scale invasion. And you believe this alliance of yours can stand against them? I believe it's our only chance, Chen replied. Individually, even the most advanced civilizations we've encountered would be overwhelmed. Together, combining our technologies and strategies, we might be able to develop countermeasures. Commander Drexel moved closer to Kethvar, his crystalline form refracting nervous patterns. Sir, the tactical data suggests these entities possess capabilities that render conventional warfare obsolete. Their ships appear to manipulate space-time directly, rather than relying on conventional propulsion or weapons. Kethvar nodded grimly. "Show me the combat recordings." The main display shifted to show sensor logs from the most recent probe encounter. A small exploration fleet from the neutral Corvani Republic had encountered 3 unknown vessels near the galactic rim. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of impossible physics. The unknown ships didn't fire weapons in any recognizable sense. Instead, they seemed to alter the fundamental structure of space around the Corvani vessels, causing them to simply cease existing in any detectable form. No debris, no energy discharge, no evidence that the ships had ever been there. "Dimensional warfare," whispered Lieutenant Vexna, her forearms stilled over her controls. "They're not destroying enemy vessels, they're removing them from this reality entirely." Admiral Thekmoth's window flickered as he leaned forward. "Kethvar, this is why the Alliance exists. No single species has encountered anything like this before. But by combining our knowledge of dimensional physics, temporal mechanics, and exotic matter manipulation, we're beginning to understand what we're facing." "And developing countermeasures?" Kethvar asked. "Theoretical ones," Chen admitted. "We've identified several potential approaches, but we need more diverse perspectives and technologies to make them practical. The Zephyrian Empire's expertise in large-scale energy management could be crucial." General Morthak's scarred features appeared on another communication window. "The Zerathi have been working with human scientists on dimensional anchor technology, methods to lock ships into standard space-time and prevent reality displacement. But our energy systems aren't powerful enough to protect anything larger than a single vessel. Zephyrian power generation could scale that protection to entire fleets," added Commander Vex's Tala, her crystalline form glowing with excitement. "Combined with Krillian adaptive tactics and human strategic coordination, we might actually have a chance." Kethvar found himself in the unprecedented position of being recruited not as a conquered enemy, but as a desperately needed ally against a threat that dwarfed any previous military challenge. The irony wasn't lost on him. The empire that had spent centuries conquering others was now being asked to help save the galaxy. "There's something else," Chen said, her tone suggesting she was revealing information of critical importance. "We've detected patterns in the unknown probe activities that suggest they're not randomly exploring." "They're searching for something specific. What kind of patterns?" Kethvar demanded. The display updated to show a 3-dimensional map of probe encounters across the galactic rim. At first, the distribution seemed random, but as Chen highlighted specific systems, a pattern emerged. The unknown forces were systematically investigating worlds with particular characteristics. High energy output, advanced technology, large populations, Chen explained. "They're specifically targeting the most developed civilizations first. Every major empire's core systems are on their apparent search list." Kethavar's breath caught as he realized the implications. They're not invading randomly. They're conducting strategic reconnaissance for a planned conquest. "Or extermination," Thekmoth added grimly. "The complete lack of communication attempts suggests they're not interested in negotiation or coexistence." Admiral Zephron's harmonics took on a crystalline urgency. "This is why we need the Zephyrian Empire, Kethvar. Your military experience with large-scale strategic planning is unmatched. Human tactical brilliance combined with Zephyrian strategic doctrine could give us frameworks for defending entire sectors simultaneously." Kethvar looked around his bridge at officers who had followed him through 17 conquests. Their expressions reflected the same realization he was experiencing, that everything they had fought for could be rendered meaningless by entities that operated beyond the rules of conventional warfare. "If I agree to this alliance," he said slowly, "what guarantees do I have that the Zephyrian Empire will maintain its identity and autonomy?" "The same guarantees every other species has," Chen replied. "Your empire becomes stronger, more capable, and more secure than it has ever been. But it also becomes part of something larger than itself." "Show him the hegemony sector," suggested Commander Vextala. The display shifted to show the former Vorthon hegemony's core systems. Instead of the conquered wasteland Kethvar expected, he saw thriving worlds with technological installations that far exceeded anything in the Zephyrian Empire. The Vorthon people were clearly more prosperous and advanced than they had been before their defeat. "This is what joining the alliance looks like," Chen explained. Not absorption or conquest, but transformation into something greater. The Vorthen people are still Vorthen. They've simply become the best possible version of themselves. But surely, Kethavar protested one final time, there must be some cost, some sacrifice required. Admiral Thekmoth's laugh carried genuine warmth. The only cost is admitting that you don't know everything about warfare, strategy, or civilization. For a species that has spent centuries proving its superiority through conquest, that can be a difficult admission. But the rewards, added General Morthak, far exceed the cost. We've all become more than we ever imagined possible. Kethavar stared at the tactical displays showing alliance fleets that combined technologies and strategies from dozens of species, ships that could phase through dimensions, weapons that manipulated fundamental forces, defensive systems that turned enemy attacks into sources of power. It was a level of capability that no empire could achieve through conquest alone. Admiral Chen, he said finally, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. On behalf of the Zephyrian Empire, I formally request to join your alliance. Chen's smile was brilliant. Welcome to the future, Admiral. Let's get to work. As alliance ships moved into formation around the Zephyrian fleet, Kethavar realized he was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization built not on conquest and domination, but on cooperation and mutual improvement. For the first time in his long military career, he felt genuinely excited about the challenges ahead. The unknown entities at the galaxy's edge would soon discover that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics, but their ability to turn enemies into allies and make everyone they encountered stronger than they had been before. The real war was just beginning, but now they would face it together.